So I'm here with Kelsey Taylor, the writer and director of To Kill a Wolf, and Adam Lee, the cinematographer of the film. Thank you so much for taking the time to meet with me today. So I'm going to get this one out of the way pretty quick. Like, what did inspire this idea? And I'm curious to know, in addition to that, which kind of came first, the idea to adapt a fairy tale or the message of the film and then work the fairy tale later?
That's a great question. It's always been the adaptation of the fairy tale. That's where it started. I'm originally from Washington State, and we were driving around, and it was like, this feels like an awesome setting for Red Riding Hood, reimagining. And so we started to think, what does that look like? And the first question was like, well, what if Red Riding Hood escaped from the wolf, and it turns out the woodsman is the bad guy? And like, what if she got stuck with him instead? And so we started to explore that idea. That was the first draft of the script, was what if the woodsman was a bad guy? And it's crazy because if you've seen the film, like, it is not that movie anymore. It is a reimagining of Little Red Riding Hood.
Well, and it's interesting you say that because the film does kind of do some fun misdirects, and I wasn't quite sure where some of it went. Mm-hmm. And so and Adam, that's a little bit of a credit to you because of the way some of the lightings and some of the things were shot. So especially with like the scenes in the woodsman's cottage. Could you talk a little bit about your approach to that?
Yeah, I think part of the aesthetic of the film kind of came out of a necessity of this is a very small film, very few. We had a crew of 9 people in total, and so it was very small scale, and we had to work with a lot of what was available, and sort of minimalism was very much the approach. And I think we struck a nice balance in like giving it an edge without, it being too naturalistic. We still implied a certain amount of like cinematic sort of wonder, we hope. Mm-hmm. And I think playing with the idea that this woodsman character is potentially a bad guy. We don't know his background. He clearly has something in his past that is, that is unsettled. So I think we very much leaned into the aesthetic of always giving some sort of slightly sinister edge to the beginning until you have a clearer picture of who this character is. So yeah, we very much embraced what we had and made it work.
So maybe this is my ignorance. So you said you were from Washington State originally, yes, but the film is in Oregon. So I'm just wondering what inspired Oregon as the...
It's interesting. So we scouted both coasts. Originally, we shot a teaser, and it was in New York State. Just because we had shot films there before, we knew it was like a close hub to New York City. But ultimately, we felt like we needed the forests of the Pacific Northwest. It feels far more intimidating and ominous. You see a lot of like girls lost in the woods, but we want to really feel like there's danger here. I would have loved to have shot in Washington, but Oregon, you cannot beat being an hour from Portland, but also be in the middle of the woods. So that was another out of necessity thing. But we drove all through Washington, we drove all through Oregon, we did New York. Like, we scouted a lot before we landed on this location. I couldn't be more happy with the choice that we made.
Yeah, Oregon's Oregon's a really interesting state in that there's quite a diversity in the landscapes. We're in the foothills of Mount Hood, where it's very evergreen, woodsy, and snowy, and it's got that sort of sinister forest. And then you can drive an hour out of that, and you're in these high desert plains. That's not like anywhere else in the U.S. And you can see the mountains off in the distance, but you're in a high desert. So the road aspect of the movie sort of lent itself to that. And we've spent a lot of time road tripping up and down the Pacific Northwest. So we were very familiar with the landscapes and understood that, this sort of journey could very much happen in real time.
The journey to Klamath Falls we've made many times. Yeah. So that road trip is so familiar to us.
Now, given the time frame that the film is set in winter months, and we know the Pacific Northwest traditionally is always usually a little gray, and there's maybe 10 days of pure sunlight a year. Certain parts in the film, and this isn't spoiling it, like we see snow coming down, we see a lot of snow on the ground, and some scenes it's very clear drives and paths. And what was that planned? Was that challenging? Like, how much of that was put in? Was it fake snow, or did the elements work to your advantage? You don't have to share everything if you want to keep some of the magic. I get it, but...
No, I love ruining the magic. That's the fun thing about talking about movies. Is like, what did you have to do to get this? What's crazy about Oregon is it's very similar to Edinburgh. Like, you get 4 seasons in a day. Sometimes 4 seasons in an hour. Yeah. When we showed up to scout, it was beautiful. It was sunny. It felt like it was spring. This was in February, late February. And then 2 weeks later, after we did all our scouting, it snowed. And we're like, oh, shoot, it's winter again. And then for the next month, it snowed, then it would melt, then it would snow, then it would melt. So it just kept changing on us, and we would rearrange the schedule. Like, I don't think we shot a single day on the day it was supposed to be shot. Even within days, we would shoot a scene, and halfway through the scene, the snow has melted. So it was a constant struggle with the elements, but we love how it turned out because we got to shoot the cabin in snow and also without snow, and same with Grandma's house, in the snow, without snow. And then even within scenes when the hunter finds Danny, I won't tell you which shots, but half of the shots are real snow, and then it stops snowing. And so we had to add the snow to the rest of it because we gambled and we're like, yeah, let's shoot with the snow. It's a lot easier to add snow than it is to remove snow.
Yes.
It was at the beginning. It was in the early months of 2023, and there was unprecedented snowstorm. Even Los Angeles was hit with snow, and us being so close to the mountains, we were destroyed by the snow. It was very difficult to move around in, to drive in, and
Snow tires.
We had actually the picture vehicle, the woodsman's truck. We bought that for the movie, and it was one of the few vehicles we had that could actually drive in that area. We had my Prius that did not have snow tires, and it did not fare very well. So it was a very hard shoot on the vehicles we had, and we were very unprepared for the amount of snow. Even Portland was shut down. The streets were ice rinks there.
Our caterer got stuck in the driveway.
Yeah.
Who are Oregon locals too.
Yeah.
So it was a crazy year.
Yeah, it added a lot of difficulty, but it added a lot of magic. And looking back on it, I think the whole crew, we all look back with a lot of fondness, like shoveling the snow out to get the vehicles out in the morning. It's freezing. You got to scrape the ice off. It's like 5 in the morning.
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. It looks better not being, in the snow at the time. But
So to that end, with I'm going to talk a little bit about the casting. You referenced a couple of the characters with Danny. So how were you able to assemble the cast that you did?
Yeah, we were really lucky. We had worked on a film together with a buddy of ours, Zach Golden, and we had worked with Ivan. And it was a comedy. And we thought Ivan was hilarious, which is an odd choice. But we're like, this guy's just really talented. And it inspired another rewrite of the script. We're like, okay, now I see this character as a different person. And so we followed that, wrote a new draft, got Ivan attached. He was into it and really did so much work with the character. And then Madison is actually connected to us through Ivan's agent or manager, who kindly was like, I think you should really take a look. And we all fell in love. And the two of them are great together. They're really funny to hear them banter.
Yeah.
And Madison's also Australian. I don't know. You would never know from the film.
no.
But yeah, she's an Aussie, and she's super, super talented. Like, she's an amazing character actress, I would say, because you see her take on this role of Danny. Her posture changes, the way she holds her face, and she does so much with so little dialogue.
So you say that the two of them had good banter back and forth, and they did have nice timing together in the film, I will say. So now I'm wondering, because you said the script has been reworked because you viewed different things with the woodsman, this and that. How much of that was improv? Did they just kind of fly with it, or was it mostly...
It was very scripted. Everything was. There's a few beats here and there. Actually, the one scene that we kind of improv got cut entirely. Not for that reason, but no, everything was pretty scripted and calculated, which I think is the nature of having such a small film.
Now, given the content of the film, which is no light matter at all, and this one is more for you, Adam, so the thing that's interesting, you talked a little about some of the challenges with the snow, not the snow, and scouting up and down. You still made this beautiful imagery, these beautiful settings. You're like, nothing bad could ever happen here. So talk a little bit about your planning with that, how much of that is collaborated, what...
Well, Kelsey...
Can I say this first?
Sure.
Adam was also our location manager, more or less. So Adam did a lot of finding of the locations, which I think as a cinematographer is really, really interesting because you know exactly what you're looking for. All right, take it away, location manager.
Yeah, well, Kelsey is previous, in a previous life, she was a cinematographer as well. So I think our collaborators we're able to get cut directly to the chase and really discuss details of how things are being shot, times of day, and finding the right aesthetic. And I think throughout the process, overall, the aesthetic, we wanted to have that feeling of a faded photograph is sort of the motif and the imagery of the film. And we would pick the times of day that made it work because we were small. We didn't have a lot of resources, but we could be nimble, so we could rearrange a schedule or wait for the perfect time of day where it does capture that magical light where the sun is just set and the sky is just barely the right hue. We did a couple sequences at dusk when she's kind of at that grandma's house walking around, and we did that across 3 days just to get the perfect times of day, and it was easy enough to sort of maneuver that. And through the photography, I think we did want to capture that because it is very much grounded in real life. But there is an element of this magical fairy tale-ness that's not, it's not a part of the plot, but there's just a feeling we wanted to capture with it. And I think we leaned into what we had to sort of capture that. And I think, very happy with the way we were able to make it look. Yeah.
What is it that you hope people take away from this film when they walk out of it?
I think there's, obviously this is a story of sort of power dynamics and people, young, impressionable people perhaps finding themselves in a place they never meant to go. And I think while maybe, there's plenty of young women and young men who have found themselves in very similar exact situations like this, but there's many people who don't have an experience exactly like this, but there's a lot of shame that I think everyone can carry around with them. And I think this film is one where you're sort of, it's encouraging people to look at themselves, look at the things that may sort of the shame in their closet and figure out a way of coming to terms with it and moving past it. And I think I love that the sort of dual protagonists of the film are able to find that sort of resolution. And I think it is an uplifting tale at the end of it. And I think at the end, after that, the final scene, I hope an audience is kind of left with some sort of feeling of satisfaction and understanding about perhaps their own difficult times and how they best can move past them.
Yeah. And for me, going back to Red Riding Hood, that idea of straying from the path. We have two characters who strayed from the path. And for me, this film is about what do you do once you have gotten off of that path? How do you get back onto it? And that's that story of redemption.
Well, thank you both so much for taking the time to speak with me. Best of luck with the film and the festival, and I look forward to seeing the journey where it goes.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having us.
Yes.